Welcome to the OPN radio network version. We're going to occupy your ears, and I'm really excited because we have the world famous Handtomouth here, one of our chatters, that's going to tell us about her Occupy experiences. Overcome Greed had to cancel unexpectedly, so we're going to get her back on sometime soon. But Handtomouth gamely volunteered to jump in here and speak to us. So welcome and thank you for coming there, Hand. We appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and share your name and nick and geographic location, age, and your contact info if you'd like to?
Do I have to do the age?
No,
I will do it.
27.
My name is Shari. I live in Long Island, outside of New York City. I'm about 35 to 45 miles outside of New York City. And you can reach me at handtomouth57@gmail.com.
Very good, very good. And you've been active for, as far as I can remember, almost as long as I have, and probably before then. What brought you to become involved and interested in the Occupy movement?
Well, you know, I have to admit, I was a sheeple. I thought that things were going to change tremendously for our country when Barack Obama became president. I am sadly disappointed. I think that we've bailed out the banks and the rest of us haven't been bailed out. People are really suffering economically. Healthcare is not what it should be. And I feel like the time is now, and we must start the movement of change.
And how do you currently participate in Occupy?
Well, you know, I don't live that close to the city in terms of being able to just get there. So I try to, anytime I'm in the city, I have a nonprofit organization that I'm involved with. And when I have to go to the city, I make sure that I stop in at the atrium. I've been at Zuccotti while it was occupied. I've been there afterwards. And I try to go in specifically for certain actions that I feel really compelled to be there at.
And you said you had been to Zuccotti while it was occupied. What was that like? You know, could you give us some of your impressions? Maybe when it was, you know, after the 17th, I suspect, but before the eviction, of course. So what
Right.
was the scene like when you were there, and how did the people interact, and what was the feeling?
It was incredible. You know, it touched my heart. I mean, everybody was so positive. Everybody was willing to help each other. Everybody was willing to educate each other, and that's what we need. You know, they had it down to a science. It was such a small space, but there were so many occupiers, and everybody did their share. I was actually there one night when they were threatened to be evicted before the eviction if they didn't clean the park. And I was there, and I witnessed that night. And, you know, it was just tremendous, the group effort, the unity. You know, it was really something to see. I'm so glad I was there that night just to witness it.
And you've participated in actions since then that were not part of the encampment?
Yeah, I've gone in for actions. You know, I went in for some smaller actions that were related to healthcare disparities. I was there, and I actually was asked to do a mic check on World AIDS Day, and that's where we marched to City Hall. And I don't know if people remember, but there were people dressed as Robin Hoods that shut down Broadway and were arrested. And it was very moving. It was very powerful, and I was glad as well to be there.
And so I think that's a good segue into maybe talking a little bit about your experience this weekend, and then we can kind of tie them together cohesively. So why don't you tell the folks what you participated in this weekend?
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to mention first that both my husband and myself participated in D17, and that's when they tried to occupy the Trinity space downtown near Chinatown. And so we were part of that. And I remember getting, you know, I remember the cops being a certain way, NYPD, and they were not pleasant, but they weren't like they were yesterday. Bloomberg's army is not a police department. It is an army. That was demonstrated yesterday. The brutality is high. If people think that it's easy to prevent others from getting arrested, I have to tell you, that's the hardest part. People get arrested, and the cops, there's so many of them, and they're on horses, and they're on mopeds, and your first instinct is to run over there and protect them, but they're so quick, and they're so brutal, and their nightsticks are out that you can't. And to me, that's the hardest part of marching. Hearing them scream, "March, march," as people get arrested. I have to tell you, that was the most unsettling thing for me personally. It's really hard to see your brothers and sisters get beaten on, and you have no choice but to keep on moving. Unless you're there, it's really hard to understand. You know, people sit on the sidelines, and I love my chatter family. I mean, this is why I'm on here, because I love so many of you. But unless you're there, it's really hard to understand. It rips your heart out. Your emotions go from being totally exhilarated when they yell, you know, off of the sidewalks, into the streets, and you're running, and for that moment, you're feeling so free. You're feeling like this is so positive. This is so good. And only to get to a next corner where you see police huddled around someone. They won't let you see what's happening, but you know it's not good. Your emotions are on a roller coaster. That's all I can say.
And, you know, I would imagine being in that kind of situation, not only is it have an emotional effect, but it has to be physically grueling. Can you speak to that?
Well, I have to tell you one thing. I did wake up this morning very angry at myself for letting myself not stop going to the gym. I have to tell you, my muscles were achy. You know, the cops turn you around at so many points. So when you're trying to get to Union Square, believe me, the last path that you're taking is the direct path. I mean, they do this purposely. They're trying to beat us down. I stopped in an intersection because the cops did not clear it right away, and I was speaking to a police officer when my husband noticed a police officer right next to him started shaking his pepper spray. I mean, I was having a conversation. This was the voice I was using. I was not accusing him. I was just having a conversation. Immediately, that cop saw me as a threat. I mean, I'm 54 years old. I don't look very threatening. I don't sound very threatening. But this cop was ready to pepper spray me, and I was just amazed. I was always at the marches and demonstrations and the rallies, and I said, don't use the word pigs. I mean, I would explain this over and over again to kids. And, you know, I would explain it nicely and say, you're only inciting them. They are part of the 99%. And I really felt comfortable with what I was saying to them. I thought I was educating them. I have to say, and I would never think I'd feel this way, I have to say, they were pigs. I mean, they're awful. They want you to screw up. They want to hurt you. They're afraid. They're afraid of what's going to come. And I think they're afraid that as this movement grows, that they're not going to be able to control it. NYPD is an army. If anyone thinks they are anything less, they are wrong.
And did you find that just overall that's a fairly general position that the police have, that they're all aggressive, they're all somewhat militant? And
you know, I will not say they are all. I did speak to one of the blue shirts, and those the community affair cops. And he said, you know, I was having a conversation with him, and he said, you know, we're not all that way. He goes, but I'm having a really hard time convincing other police officers to be more like me. He was an Hispanic man. I think DK spoke to him as well. And, you know, I think it's fear. They don't know what to expect. And I think that the department is instilling this fear. If we if they don't shut it down now, what's going to happen next? Well, the bottom line is the more they scare us, the more they use their tactics, and the more they oppress us, we're only going to come back 10 times fold.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that, and I'm glad you touched on the fact that I think a lot of their actions, if not personally, institutionally, are fear-based, and it's being cultivated at a high level and pushed down.
Well, that's the problem, right? That's the problem. I mean, it's almost like a brainwashing thing. People don't realize when you're outside of New York City and you look at police departments, what's happening in Washington State is not what's happening in New York City. I mean, I had an officer, I was on the sidewalk, come on moped onto the sidewalk and run over my toes, right over my toes.
Deliberately.
And my husband said to him, "You're on the sidewalk." My husband kind of lost it for a second, and I was more worried about him than I was about my toes. Luckily, my toes are fine, and my husband's fine as well. But I was on the sidewalk. I was following, quote-unquote, orders. He still felt the need to show his way of force by going over my feet. I had nowhere to go. You're in these are narrow streets downtown. If you haven't been in New York City downtown, it's hard to realize how narrow the streets are and how congested it gets. If you have a march, you have so many people on these narrow sidewalks. It can be very dangerous. And the cops did nothing to protect us. They did everything to make us fear them.
Right. Do you have a feel for how many people were at the march? I mean, it looks like a huge amount of people when we're watching it on the streams, but as being a part of it, was it hundreds? Was it thousands? What
No,
was the scope?
at the beginning, that was my major concern. Here we were at Zuccotti, and like, where is everybody? Where is everybody? My husband and I kept saying, we need more people. We need more people. By the time we left Zuccotti Park, there was at least 1,000 to 2,000 people. That's my estimate. I mean, I don't have, I have really nothing to reference that, but all I could think of was that we were able to circle the entire square of Zuccotti Park when we started to march. And then when we got to Union Square, I couldn't believe how long it took for everybody to end there. And you could see blocks and blocks of people. I'd say 2,000 people.
Excellent. And it was represented well demographically with all social stratas and minorities and just like a collective community thing.
Absolutely. We have to remember that we had first of all, we were all carrying signs for Trayvon Martin. That seemed to be the theme of the day, even though it was not the Trayvon Martin event that happened on Wednesday. It was against police brutality, and it was very fitting. It was very diverse. I was thrilled. I saw organizations there that I work with in my field who, are homeless organizations, all diverse. It was wonderful. I didn't see that at certain marches and certain demonstrations, but I did see it yesterday, and I think anyone there would agree with me.
Yeah, that's what I was, witnessing. I did an event yesterday evening where I was, projecting the streams for some people, and we caught some of the GA in Union Square afterwards, and some of those people were so eloquent, but it looked like such a wide and diverse crowd. And some of the people that I was, showing the projection to said, this is so difficult to believe because most of these people get their information via MSM. And they said every day, if there's a mention, the only mention is the movement's dying. And somebody said, there's 1,000 people there. We can see them. What are they talking about?
It's
that
not
the movement's dying.
We woke up this morning, my husband and myself. My husband reads the Sunday papers, and we're in New York. And he went through the paper, and he said, I think we should stop subscribing to the newspaper. He said there's not one single mention of OWS. And I'm not surprised. This is all part of it. I really think people are starting to get afraid. They can't stop us.
Right.
So, so they don't want to, they want to pretend we don't exist because they're afraid. This movement is unstoppable. I can tell you from what I saw yesterday, this movement is not going anywhere. It is not dead. It is alive and doing well.
Okay. Are you watching the chat along with me, Hand?
Say that again?
Are you watching the chat along with me?
Yeah.
Okay. You see, Opie has a question about the elaborate on the comments happening this morning about daisy chains. I'm not quite familiar with this.
I'll fill you in a little bit about that. In certain states, I think the police operate differently, especially in the West Coast. I even think the D.C. cops, which is made up of many different departments, acts differently. People are saying, why not daisy chain around the NYPD when they arrest somebody?
Oh, okay.
Now, you have to remember, as many protesters that are out there, it's not like 1 in 10. There are so many cops. I mean, you have cops that are right next to you, close to the curb on mopeds. You have cops walking. You have cops on horses. I mean, the cops are almost equal to the number of people marching. Okay, maybe not to that extent. So you cannot daisy chain. You can run, but there will be cops right on you with their billy clubs and their pepper spray. The march, the people that were kind of being for the public safety, OWS people, want you to keep moving as much as this is the part, and again, I don't want to get emotional, but what people don't understand is we don't leave our brothers and sisters aside and just keep on going because we want to. We have no choice. You can either get beat up or move on. And once it gets violent, then everybody gets hurt. And let's not forget, there are people there with young children. I get very emotional about this part. I think that people don't realize NYPD is now an army. Stop thinking of them as a police department. They are not there to protect us. They are not there to help us. They are there to harm us. They don't want us there. And so if you run in and you try to daisy chain, what's going to happen is you will be arrested and beat up at the same time. We saw what happened during this week when a medic was thrown to the ground on concrete and then trampled on. She now, as we found out yesterday when another medic spoke, she's going to have a permanent brain condition for the rest of her life. I mean, this is serious stuff. We want to keep moving on. We can't protect everybody who gets arrested. We cry, we yell, we scream, we get names. We make sure that that the guild is there, the lawyers guild is there, that they're notified. I mean, people are screaming once they get arrested, what's your name? What's your name? And it goes right to the lawyers guild. It's not like we're leaving our brothers and sisters behind, but we are really, really limited in what we can do.
Yeah, I think I've observed that because it literally looks like the police force is deliberately and aggressively just hurting people, not even to kettle them, but just to keep the crowds moving, as if they stop to assist or stop to help, then they would lose the police force would lose the momentum of control. So I think it has to be extremely difficult on the ground.
It's very difficult, and and they don't have rules. I mean, I stayed on the sidewalk to avoid arrest. I kept marching, and yet now we have a cop on the sidewalk on a moped who's running over my feet. I mean, there are no rules. You can't do the right thing because whatever you do, they're going to try to oppress you. It doesn't matter if you're listening to them and following orders or not. They're trying to oppress us. They're trying to stop OWS. It's not working, but it's hard. It's very hard. And my heart breaks. I mean, when I heard that 16-year-old girl, I mean, I'm a mother. My first instinct is, what? They're dragging a 16-year-old girl? My instinct is like, let me at him,
Right.
It's just a natural instinct to want to help, other people. So, don't get it when people, say things from the sidelines when they're not in the mix. And I don't mean, it's hard. When you see things on live stream, sometimes it's different when you're on the ground. I have to say, I keep saying, but I have to say it was really difficult for me. That part of it was the hardest part for me. Knowing people were arrested and I couldn't do anything to prevent it, that was the hardest part.
Well, this is, why it's so important to be able to broadcast your voice and your observations, because a lot of us are so far flung and so far removed that, this is the most true and honest impression that we receive of the movement. And I know it's, emotional for you to revisit it, so we're really, really grateful. I want to move on and...
Well, let me just say one thing before we move on.
Go ahead.
As emotional as it was, it's not going to stop me. I will be back in there, and I am going to try to go to as many direct actions, as I possibly can. Again, I'm limited because I don't live close to the city, and it's expensive to commute into the city from where I am. But I will be there a minimum of 1 time a week, and hopefully 2 to 3. I just had to say that. As emotional as I sound.
It's awesome. I have much love and respect for you doing that, and for everybody that's there. I mean, I've spent the last 2 or 3 days constantly emailing and texting, like Elizabeth and some of the streamers on the ground, and it's just such a great thing. And you have to know, speaking for as somebody who can't be there, we're so proud of you for being there for us and representing.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm just as proud as you guys, because it really means something to know people have my back when I'm out there. Knowing that people are concerned, knowing that they'll call the police department if they see something, knowing they'll call the commissioner's office, means a lot to people on the street and on the ground. People don't realize that, but chatters are much appreciated. And if you think otherwise, you're wrong. I mean, people know that people are out there to bear witness. If they can't be in an action, that's fine. They also serve other purposes. And knowing that people have your backs, knowing that people can get it together to get you fed, means a lot. Now we can move on.
I just wanted to mention, I know you guys put together a food delivery situation the other day in Union Square, and there was a lot of chatter, but I know those people got it. And, Eric, the fellow that we're streaming with, some people came up and commented to him how grateful they were. So all that stuff is well received, I think, and it speaks well of the chatters that they're willing to organize and make those actions, because every little bit matters and every little bit helps. So I just always want us to remember that, to encourage. We may not be able to march in the street, but we can do other things, and it's all important if you view it from a cohesive standpoint. All the little elements that go together to get changes to happen.
Exactly. It's all integral. I mean, one part doesn't work without the other part. We are all in this together, and I think we've proved both on the ground and online that we're all in this for the long term. We know it's a movement. It's going to take time. But if we continue the way we are now, I think another world is possible.
I believe it is too, and I think it's so important to remind each other that, we all have difficult days and get frustrated and all that, but we all are in this together, and the more cooperation we can knit together between ourselves, the more effective we're going to be. And we just need to keep our eye focused on the larger ideal and the larger issue. And sometimes, things are going to rub us the wrong way, or, one of us is going to do something another doesn't like. And it's important to transcend those kinds of things for the larger good. And I'll get off my soapbox with that.
No. That's I think what you said is very important, and we all have to hear that.
Yep. So tell me what the most valuable lesson you've learned so far as part of Occupy has been.
I think the most valuable lesson is knowing that people are united. And I know that doesn't sound like a lesson, but you know, when you first go into something, and I know I'm speaking from my personal experience, not for everyone else's. You know, you go in and you're timid. I mean, I remember the first time I went to Zuccotti when it was occupied, and all the tents, and I was timid about it. I walked around, you know, and I was very timid. But I learned that people really want you there. They really want to have the conversation. So, I mean, it's an important lesson to know that people want to learn, people want to talk, people want to communicate. And, you know, I've spoken to people that I never would have thought I'd ever have a connection with, and now I'm connected.
That's a really interesting observation, and one that brings it down to a human level. One of the things I clearly am interested in is communication, education, and information. And I keep thinking the more of these conversations we can have, face to face, voice to voice, so that everything is personal, then we can build, you know, substantive relationships that are going to get us through difficult times, and we'll band together and help each other out. It's kind of a idyllic vision, but I think it's necessary because our whole culture has been designed to separate us and divide us, because then we're easier to control, right? So we just have to say no to that.
No, and I wanted to add, you know, the most fun I've had, well, I shouldn't say the most fun, but I've had a lot of fun after meetings. I would go to the atrium, and I would just sit in on working groups. And I was fascinated. And someone always looked at me and said, well, you know, what do you have to say? They wanted to hear me. You know, here I was, you know, just kind of sitting in on the working group in the think tank. And, you know, people want to hear your voice. They want to know what you're feeling. And that's wonderful.
That's right, because we're conditioned to believe we don't have a voice, and one thing this movement is letting, you know, making it known that everybody does have a voice. Can you give us what you think the three most important things Occupy needs to do in the near future to keep in a forward progressive mode?
I think that they need to stay focused. I think that they need to promote diversity, and I think that they just have to let their hearts be open and their minds be open. And I really think they're doing all of these things, and I think we're really in for a wonderful spring.
I tend to agree. It's the last week, I don't know how anybody else feels, but the last week has been pretty impressive, and I think we're breaking out of the winter doldrums. People are able to get out and do some things, and stuff is happening. Positive stuff is happening. You know, we had the march in D.C. yesterday that Mr. X covered for us, and he told me last night, he said there were 3,000 or more people there, another Trayvon Martin rally in March.
Right.
So it's starting
isn't it
to grow.
nice to see communities come together over an issue that is so important? I mean, you know, I'm speaking to the women now. We're all Trayvon's mother. You know, this isn't about race. This is about, well, it is about race. I have to take that back. If it was my son, it's not likely it would have happened. So it is about race, but it's just so positive that everyone is coming together on this issue. And, you know, one thing I wanted to add, and I know I'm a New Yorker, so I just have to say this. Let's remember those people who are holding down the fort in Union Square. They do not have any comforts of Occupy. We always felt like, oh, those poor people in the tents, you know, oh, it must be so difficult. Well, they don't even have a tarp. They're sitting there, and it was raining today in New York City at different points, and they're sitting there holding down Union Square without the ability to even lay down. Cops will come and kick you if you lay down on a bench, on the concrete, anywhere. They have to sit straight up throughout the night, and they can't fall asleep. And they don't have any of the luxuries, which is funny to call them luxuries, of a typical Occupy.
Well,
So I think
Everything is
we'll have to keep them in our hearts.
right, and it's again just grueling and physically and emotionally demanding situation there. So we do need to be grateful and thankful and support them however we can.
Yep.
So I'm going to give you the chance to add anything else you might like to, and if the chatters have any questions for you, now would be a good time to put them up. If you guys could put them up in italics or bolds or something so we can see them easier, that would be great. So
one thing I'd like to reiterate while they're thinking of questions, and don't ask me tricky one, guys, because I'm limited. But one thing I have to reiterate, I have found a new family through these chats. There are so many people that I love and that I can't imagine life without anymore.
that's I feel the same way. It's like I've met so many people and connected with people. My phone directory is so huge. I spend a lot of time on this with all you guys, and it's absolutely incredible. Jimmy wants to know, why does the NYPD tell everybody to stay on the sidewalk?
Okay, so in order to march in the streets in in New York City, the NYPD will only honor your march in the streets if you have a permit. They deny us permits all the time. The women's parade that I attended, they reached out for permits. This was the International Women's Day. This was clearly not going to be a violent kind of action, but they deny the permits all the time. So in order to, they approve the St. Patrick's Day parade. We know that, but they won't approve any permits so that you can march in the streets. So what happens is they just, march along with you, and they don't let you go into the street. And if you go into the street, you're immediately arrested.
Well, that was a pretty clear and concise answer. It's just another manipulation, tactic. I think they have all of them at their disposal. Ping is asking, what do you think the most effective way to get rid of Kelly is?
Well, if screaming would have done a ping, it would have happened yesterday because many people were screaming. I don't think that's going to happen right now. As far as NYPD is concerned, Kelly's doing a great job. He's having the NYPD intimidate us. He has them oppressing us. As far as they're concerned, he's keeping the city safe from OWS. I don't know what it's going to take. Let's face it, his son, the rapist, got off. So, we don't have a whole lot of clout right now with getting Kelly out of there.
Zena asks, do you think public pressure from the outside helps against the NYPD? Like, people who aren't directly in the city, but people from all over the nation that call the lines and, march in response to some of their actions?
Well, it certainly couldn't hurt.
Right. Oh, good point. Excellent.
It certainly couldn't hurt. Get on the phones, write letters. I'm hoping that the ACLU might, have some input. But you have to remember, the Lawyers Guild, NCLU, I just lost my acronym. But, they are working really hard for us. I hate to say it, but is it going to take people dying? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take, but it certainly couldn't hurt for the public to voice their outcries.
Right. Any more questions from the chat stream? We could probably let Shari go. Everybody's complimenting you. And on a personal note, Shari, I'm very grateful that you agreed to do this, and it was so informative, and I know it's not easy to talk about, but I appreciate your willingness, and thank you for being there for us and coming here and telling us your story and being such an active participant on our channels and being so supportive of all our people. And I can't say enough how much love and respect I have for you. Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you. Obviously, someone else isn't feeling that, but you know what? You can't please everybody. All I want everyone to know is, OWS all the way. That's what I'm about.
Yep. Well, I think we're going to let you go now, and thank you again for giving us the time. And the chatters, if you give me a minute or two to click around, I'll put on a little bit more music. And I hope you and Mr. Hand have a great evening. Thank you again so much.
No problem. I love you guys. Bye.